Well, hello, my name's Ed Donner. I'm a two-time AI startup co-founder and a former managing director from JP Morgan, and I'm about to take you on a wild ride. We're going to be spending the next 6 weeks together on an adventure. I've actually just finished myself doing the 6 weeks worth of projects. There are 8 projects along the way, and I can tell you, I have some astonishing things in store for you, and I can't wait to get started. Let's do this. Now, it's customary with these things to kick off with an introduction to myself and talk about the goals of the course, but people who've taken my courses before will know that I don't like doing that. Let's not do that. Let's get straight to action. Let's go and see some autonomous AI agents in practice, and we'll come back and do that other stuff later. So I've taken us now to the app N8N, which is an exciting app that is definitely generating interest. This is an example of one of these low-code or no-code workflow apps that allows you to construct a workflow of orchestrating between different applications and build it without necessarily needing to write any code yourself. The difference with some of the other workflow tools like this is that it has generative AI built into it. And that's why people are so excited about N8N. So if you come to n8n.io, which is the cloud version of it, you can also download it and run it locally. But here we're using it in the cloud. You can press Get Started and set up an account if you want to do this yourself, or you can just watch me. But it might be fun to try this out yourself if you haven't used it before. So I've set up an account, I've done that. And once I've signed in, I get this beginning screen to add my first step. You can also use one of their templates right off the bat if you want to. But we're going to build something ourselves right now. So we're going to add a first step, and what we're going to do is we're going to begin by starting with a chat message. So this, if I go back to the canvas here, you press back to canvas on the top left, we can now see this canvas, which is showing that we have a chat box here that's represented by this chat window down here, and we can chat and do something as a result of that chat. So what do we want to do? Well, we press the plus button right here, and we come over to the right and we decide that we want to have advanced AI, and we're going to create an AI agent right here. And now if I go back to Canvas, I'll show you that what we have in our canvas now is a chat message going into an AI agent represented by this box, and then something can come out of the back of that. And you don't need to know all of the details here. This is more to give you an idea, and by all means you can play with this yourself, but most of this course is going to be about building things like this. But let's give this a shot. So the next thing we can do is add a chat model. And this is a large language model that's going to sit behind this AI agent. And I'm going to pick OpenAI chat model. Now, that's because I have an OpenAI key, which we'll be setting up for you if you don't have one already quite soon. And alternatively, if you don't want to do this, you can use Ollama instead and run for free, but you would then have to install it locally. But I've set up my OpenAI account, and you can do this yourself. All you do is you come down here and you press Create New Credential and you type in your API key. But I've done that already, so my OpenAI account is linked. It's as simple as that. And here it is. It looks here. OpenAI chat is connected to my chat model. So far, so good. Let's keep moving. We're now going to add in a tool. Now, tools are one of the most fundamental building blocks of agentic AI. And this week is going to be a lot about building tools. So I press the plus button to open up the list of tools that I could connect with the AI agent. And you can see there's a large number of tools, a lot of different things that this agent could use, could take advantage of. It could do calculations with a calculator. It can book meetings using my Google Calendar or read my emails, look at my Facebook timeline. Lots of things that it can do, as you will see here. Read Hacker News for me. I would like that. Okay, but we're going to go all the way down and we're going to find something here that I just want to show off, which is the Philips Hue tool. I don't know if you know about Philips Hue. It's something which is gives you light bulbs, and I have a lot of light bulbs in my apartment here. And we're just going to pick a light bulb, this one here called the bed strip, and we can add a field. We'll say brightness. We'll let the AI automatically choose what it wants to do with brightness. We'll add a field hue, which is like the color, and we'll let it do that too. And that's all there is to it. We've now, when I go back to the canvas, you'll see that we have given a tool to this agent that you can see visually here that it is able to control the Philips Hue light bulb. So here we are looking at our chat, our agent, the LLM, and the tool. Let's get going with bringing up the chat message that's associated with this input. And let's say, well, hi there. And you can see it working and thinking, hello, how may I assist you today? Let's say, please turn the lights on bright white. And let's see, and bam! Did you see that coming? On come the lights that I am, in fact, wearing my light strip. So here we go. Now, you may say to me, okay, that's cool. I see tools in action. I see an LLM that I'm chatting with that's controlling my lights in my apartment. Great. But it's not really showing me autonomy. I'm not seeing something where it's making its own decision. Well, then let me show you that. So to make it autonomous, we need to give this agent some agency. So let's say, please pick a color. Let's say either deep red or deep blue, and change the lights to that color. Let's see how it does with that. And there we go. A lovely red comes out. Fantastic. So there you have it. We have an autonomous agent. Maybe it's a simple task, but nonetheless, you just saw it making its own decision, picking red over blue and changing the light bulb all through N8N's web app. So look, that was a bit small and superficial, but nonetheless, it was our first foray into the world of agentic AI. And I strongly encourage you to go and take a look at N8N. It's so easy to use. It's so quick to set up an account, to hook up a web form to your Google Calendar, and lots of other things to try out. And it gives you a nice hands-on sense of what it's like to work with agents. But I should say, this is the last time that we'll be using a tool, a low-code, no-code tool like this as a user of AI. For the next 6 weeks, we're going to be rolling up our sleeves and we're going to be coding agents. We're going to be building them ourselves and working with frameworks that allow us to build and have different agents interact, be orchestrated to solve problems. Okay, so in the next lecture, I will tell you more about what I have in store for you. See you then. So as promised, I'm coming back now to tell you what this course is actually about. We're going to be doing 3 things. We're going to be working on theory, talking about what agents are and what an agentic architecture looks like. We're going to be talking about frameworks, so working with actual platforms that allow us to build and deploy AI agents. And of course, we're going to be getting hands-on, rolling our sleeves up, building some projects. Some of the projects will be more on the sort of entertaining side. Some of them will be much more on the commercial side, building real functionality. All of them will be fun. So I've organized the curriculum into 6 modules that I call the weeks, week 1 through to week 6. And I do that because I want to give you some motivation to be pushing on through this and keep up the drive. But you can take it at whatever pace you like. And if you can do it faster than 6 weeks, then so much the better. But that's how I structured it. And each week builds on the last. The first week that we're on right now is called Foundations, and it's all about grounding you, building out the basics, talking about what it takes to have an agentic architecture, how different LLMs can interact. And we're going to be building an agentic solution just with LLMs interacting natively, not going through a framework. But in week 2, we introduce our first framework, the OpenAI Agents SDK, which is a beautiful framework because it's so simple and elegant and flexible, and we'll build some things with it. We'll add guardrails. It's going to be really great. In week 3, though, we move to the very popular CrewAI. I'd say that Crew is the fan favorite. People love Crew. It's on the sort of low code end of the spectrum. It allows you to write some configuration and use that to define your crew of agents that will solve your task. And it's a lot of fun to work with. Perhaps on the opposite end of the scale in terms of code, of low code to full code, is LangGraph, which is very sophisticated, quite complex, very powerful, and we will be using all of its power. And in week 5, another powerful one is Microsoft's AutoGen. AutoGen is actually a couple of different things, and we'll look at all of them. But one of the things it is like an environment where agents can collaborate remotely, and that's going to be fun. And we wrap it up in week 6 with our capstone project and introducing MCP, the Model Context Protocol from Anthropic. Incredibly exciting, and it's really taking off in a big way. This is an open source way that different models can connect and collaborate, share each other's capabilities using a common protocol. So I'm really excited to show it to you. It makes a lot of sense to have that in week 6 because we're going to draw on a lot of the things we've learned about in prior weeks. It's all going to come together. And that's very much the idea of this structure. Each week builds on the last as you build up your capabilities and you upskill all the way through to the end of week 6 when you will have mastered engineering AI agents. And each week consists of 5 days, 5 different sets of lectures to build up your skill sets during that week. I give you Saturday and Sunday off. So just to show you what it looks like, I'm not going to talk to what we're going to do on every single one of the days. I want to give you that sense that there's a lot going on. We're going to cover a lot of stuff. And this is color coordinated to match an earlier slide that orange represents some theory building. Yellow is the project. And that first project we're going to do at the end of this week is going to be really cool, really fun, something that you'll be able to put into practice. Building your own agent that you'll be able to deploy into production that we will do that is able to answer career questions about yourself. It will be like your career alter ego that you can put on your website. Instead of having a resume, people can talk to you and talk about your experience and your challenges and so on. Isn't that cool? We're going to be doing that in the next few days. That's week 1. Week 2, we're going to be, as I say, OpenAI Agents SDK. You'll see that the blue here, blue boxes represents a new framework that we are learning. And again, the yellow are the projects, including deep research, which will be a great app. Week 3 with Crew, you can see we're going to learn about Crew and then build a couple of different projects with Crew. Week 4 is LangGraph. Week 5 is AutoGen. And then week 6 is MCP and the capstone project, which is going to come at the end of this course, bringing everything together. So as I say, I'm not putting this up here to show you every single box. I'm doing it so you see we've got a lot of material to cover. There's a lot of areas in which we'll be growing skills. And by the end of it, you'll have ticked off everything you see here on this screen, the complete curriculum, and you will have true expertise in the world of AI agents. And I'm now just going to color in the boxes which represent the delivery of major projects. And in particular, I would say that the numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8 are some of the really exciting ones I have in store for you. I've just finished building them and I had so much fun doing it, and I can't wait to share it with you. And just to show you that it's definitely worth hanging on in there for the next few weeks, let me tell you about those last 4 projects. One of them is writing an agentic platform that's going to represent a whole engineering team, a team of different people, a front-end developer, a back-end developer, an engineering lead, and a tester that will collaborate together to write some software for us, and we'll see them all in action. One of them will be, I call it Sidekick. It's going to be an agentic platform that will be able to bring up a browser and interact in that browser together with you. So you will have your own sidekick that can do things with you. It's a bit like a Manus, if you know Manus, of course, the Chinese agentic startup that's really caused, again, a lot of excitement. But Manus runs its platform in a sort of cloud box that you can't control. You can just watch it doing its thing. You'll have something a bit like that, but it will be on your box and you can work with it side by side, a true sidekick. Project 7, I call Creator, and this one isn't particularly commercial. It's just really interesting that this is one where we will build an agentic framework that is itself able to create new agents. It will actually give rise to agents, an agentic platform that generates agents. And we're going to have those agents doing some commercial stuff, just so there is a commercial angle to it. And Project 8, the capstone project, is something that I've wanted to build for so long, and I'm so happy to get to do it. This is a financial markets trading simulation where we will have multiple agents that can actually go off and make investment decisions, searching the internet for financial news, looking up stock prices, true real-time stock prices, and company information, and read company annual reports, SEC filings, and then can make buy and sell decisions trading on the market. Now, that part is the simulated part, that we'll have some code that will just keep track of their accounts. And by the way, the code that we'll have keeping track of their accounts is code that will have been written by Project 5, by our engineering team, not by us. Just to add an extra dimension to this, some of the code will have been written by our agentic engineering team. But what you see here in this screenshot is the results of this just running yesterday, and it was actually a terrible day on the stock market. So all 3 agents lost money this day, but hopefully by the time that we get to week 6, they will have recovered and we'll be able to actually show some profits that we're making in our virtual world. And of course, I should say now, and I will say then, that this should not be used for any real investment decisions. Of course, this is purely illustrative, but as an illustrative project, it's going to be a lot of fun. And while I hope that all of these projects will be entertaining, I will be trying to achieve 2 things from them. One of them is to have them be highly educational. Each project should allow you to upskill your capabilities and your expertise. The other is that I want them to be commercial. They should help you to have ideas of how you can apply this skill in business, whether it's a B2B or B2C kind of project. This should equip you to be able to put this into practice immediately, the very next day, on commercial projects. So now, just to introduce myself very quickly, just to show you that I am actually qualified to be talking to you about this stuff. So my name's Ed Donner. I spent most of my career at JP Morgan, where I ran engineering and science teams of about 300 people. I started out in London, which is where I'm from originally, if you couldn't tell from the accent. And then I moved to Tokyo for a bit, and now I am based in New York. And I'm currently the CTO, co-founder of an AI startup called Nebula. It's at nebula.io. You can go and check it out. And prior to that, I founded my own AI startup called Untapped. And actually, Untapped was acquired in 2021. And this picture on the bottom left is a picture from the billboard in Times Square announcing our acquisition, which was a particularly magical day for me. So that was a really incredible moment. But I don't just show you this picture to show off about my moment in Times Square, but also because I happen to live about 1 block that away. If that guitar weren't there in the Hard Rock Cafe, you'd be able to see my apartment building. And I'm facing the window right now that is facing there. So in some way, if that guitar weren't there and this was some kind of a live feed, then you would see me waving at you right now or something. Another thing that I do is I love to be a speaker and instructor on all things LLM, and I have another Udemy course called LLM Engineering, which has got 60,000 plus people on it and has been just an absolute joy. And I hope that some people that are on this now have actually taken that LLM engineering course, in which case I must apologize to you because you heard almost exactly this same introduction when you took that course too. So sorry, I hope you sped through it the second time round. Maybe it gets better on the second time, I don't know. Anyway, final thing to say, which I also said last time, is that here's a picture of me about to fly a plane. And you might think I'm showing you this because I am fabulously capable at flying planes. But no, au contraire, I'm showing you this because my great skills in the field of LLM and agentic AI is only surpassed by my complete inability to do anything requiring hand-eye coordination. So, in fact, if you find yourself in a plane and you look in the cockpit and you see that it's me there in front of the stick, then you want to be looking for a parachute as quickly as you can. But by contrast, if you find yourself taking a course about agentic AI and I am the course instructor, then you've come to the right place. This is completely in my wheelhouse. All right, let's get to it. So please humor me. I've got a couple more admin things before we get into action. So I wanted to talk about how I've positioned this course and whether it's right for you. You may be new to coding, someone that's never written a line of code before. You might be someone that already considers yourself an agent engineer. Those are the 2 extremes. Or you might be in the middle. You're already a Python coder, or you are an AI engineer. Maybe you're even someone that's taken my LLM engineering course, in which case, thank you and welcome. But I'm here to tell you that this course is designed to appeal to everyone across that entire continuum. There is something here for everyone. The people in the yellow boxes in the middle, you're going to have the best time with this. It's most well positioned for you. That is for sure. That goes without saying. For the people that are new to coding, it's going to be challenging. There's no doubt. You're going to have a lot of patience, but this course is okay. You'll be able to get there and build amazing things. For someone who's already an agent engineer that's built some agent platforms before, you may want to speed through some of this, but I've made sure that there's advanced material covered too. We're going to be doing some really interesting things at every point and building some great projects too. So I'm here to say, if you're new to coding, take some time with the guides that I've written. You'll find them in the guides folder when we install the repo. And I've used that as a way to build up your foundational expertise so that you can hit the ground running. For Python coders and particularly for AI engineers, if you've taken the LLM engineering course, it's perfect. Then you're going to have a great time. And for agent engineer, focus on the projects. That's when we really put things into action. I'm really proud of the projects we've built. I think you're going to enjoy them, even if you've got some experience with this already. And for anyone that hasn't taken the LLM engineering course, I'll be sure to put links to it in the course resources. And it's something that I really do see that as complementary, and it's not necessarily a prerequisite to this course. You can come into this course without having taken it for sure. But if you have taken it, you will be really well equipped for this course because it builds up a lot of depth of expertise in terms of what it means to work, to choose and apply LLMs to solve problems. So in just a moment, we're going to be starting to code. I know you're antsy. I know you're waiting for this. Can't he stop talking and get to it? We will be. But I do want to tell you that the first thing we're going to have to do is set up your environment. And setting up an environment, a big data science environment at the frontier of what's possible, it can be a bit of a painful process. I'm here to help. I'm here to make it go smoothly, but please do have something of a thick skin for knowing that you may hit some challenges. We'll figure them out. We'll get them fixed. We'll get you up and running. This time, though, we're going to be helped out by a couple of really great friends in the form of the platform Cursor, which we'll be using as our IDE. And I just love Cursor. Cursor, of course, is the AI platform that's powered by LLMs that allows us to be so productive, and it's built on VS Code and it's just great. And so it's going to be a lot of fun working with that. But perhaps more specifically for building the environment, we're going to be using this product called UV, which is, you can think of as something which is replacing Anaconda that I used in the LLM engineering course. And it's sort of built on top of using virtual environments. It's really fast and it's really simple and it just works. I am such a fan of UV. It's actually a student on the LLM engineering course that first drew my attention to it and said, this is what we should be using. And it was too late for LLM engineering, but it's not too late for this course. And it turns out that UV has become so popular that most of the agent frameworks we'll be looking at already have UV at their core. Crew is kind of like built with UV, as you'll see. So UV is really easy to use. It is nothing like Anaconda for people that have done this before. And it's basically very, very similar to using virtual LMs, and you are going to love it. So I know it's always annoying to have to bring in something new to the mix, but it will be worth it. You're going to thank me for this. You're going to love UV. And it's written in Rust, and everyone loves things that are written in Rust. So there you go. Get ready for that. There's actually one more difficult conversation that we have to have, and it's about APIs. So look, this course does involve making calls to frontier models like OpenAI and DeepSeek, and they come at a price. There is a price point there. And I want to make the point that it is completely up to you. You can choose, I use both OpenAI and DeepSeek, but you can choose to only use DeepSeek throughout for a much lower cost. And Gemini you can also use, and right now Gemini has a free tier. I don't know how long that will last, but so you can use Gemini for free for most of the course. You can also use Ollama completely free, just running open source models locally on your computer, no cost at all. But there are some trade-offs here. If you want to use any kind of good model, it will take a very long time. If you use the quick models like Llama 3.2, then it might have troubles being coherent, and you certainly won't get to see the kinds of results that I'll be getting when I'm using the frontier models. But that allows you to have a sort of balance. You can run things locally for free and see one set of results, and you can watch me do it with the frontier models if you don't want to spend the API charges yourself. So what are these API charges? Well, different countries might have different pricing. What I can tell you is that for me running this entire course, I spent well under $5 on any of the LLM model costs. It's very cheap. OpenAI, the first time you use it, you need to put down at least $5 up front and a kind of pay as you go that you spend against. So that's annoying. So you might have to do that if you haven't done it before. But other than that, the actual amount that we'll spend will be relatively small, a matter of a few dollars. And it's very hard to spend very much on DeepSeek because it's so cheap. Now, I will say that in the last week, I have an option to use a proper real-time market data provider that I use, and that costs me $20. But that's not necessary. There are free options as well. But if you get into it like I do, then you might do that. And, I just want to make the point at the end. People do have people get frustrated about API costs. There's something about them that are a bit galling because it feels like everyone is sort of nickel and diming you. You're getting charged a little bit here, a little bit there, another API cost. And I understand that even though I say these things are very cheap, a few dollars, it adds up. And that's not always cheap. And particularly with exchange rates in different economies, that might be quite a burden. But I do want to make the point that you have to keep in mind what's going on when we run inference on these large LLMs. There are trillions of floating point calculations going on. This is heavy machinery. And so it's not like these companies are just making extra cash off you. I'm sure they are quite profitable, but most of it, the margins are relatively slim because there's a lot of compute cost associated with running these massive models. And if you think of the price of buying a new laptop or even a big, like a gamer box that could actually run larger models itself, you'd be talking about thousands of dollars. So this kind of API pricing, while it can feel, as I say, a little bit galling sometimes, having to pay each of these different APIs, it is worth keeping in mind the context of what's going on behind the scenes. These companies need to pay their electricity bills. There's a lot of compute, and we're getting real value from what we use. So I don't know if that helps or not, but it gives you some context. Please do keep in mind, you don't need to spend anything on APIs if you don't want to. So there are 3 things for you to remember. The first of them is that there are resources that accompany this course, and they're really great. There's a website where I've put links and I've got extra content in the form of YouTube videos that should be helpful. In GitHub, there's a whole section with different guides to teach different kinds of skills that you might need. And there's some troubleshooting guides in there too that will fix problems for you. And the labs, I'm updating them all the time. The labs, you can think of them as like an ongoing, a fluid resource. Every time you do a Git pull to get the latest, you'll get refreshed with new content. Maybe not every time, but most times. I'm trying to keep them to be a living, breathing resource for you. Then remember to stay patient. Remember that if you hit problems, if you hit roadblocks, that's actually a great learning opportunity because figuring out what's going on, figuring out how to solve this is one of the best ways to learn. And try and go with it, try and enjoy it as much as you can. There's some juicy projects, and figuring out why they don't work first time, that's part of the fun. And then the third point is that if all else fails, or even if nothing else fails, then contact me. I'm here. I love this stuff. I'm actually super responsive. If you email me or if you LinkedIn with me, then I'll respond very quickly, unless I'm in a meeting or I'm traveling or something, or I'm asleep for people in different time zones. I do tend to reply really quickly. People are always surprised. In fact, a lot of people think that I'm an AI agent when I reply. They're like, Ed, do you have an agent of yourself? But no, it's the real me. I will reply. I love getting questions. I love answering. So do Feel free to reach out, be in touch. I welcome ideas and thoughts and questions and whatever you got. And by all means, if you're up for it, then LinkedIn with me. Some people don't feel comfortable doing that for some reason, but I'm very open to it. I love building a community of people in data science and that can support each other. If people are looking to hire someone, or if they're looking for jobs, then I can help connect people. So it's a really great way for me to build and contribute to the community. And this is really important. But one of the things that people did from my last course is they would post projects that they've done and tag me on them, or things that they've done from the course. And I can then amplify it, because I can then jump in with some comments and make some observations or say how great it is they've done something. And that will then be available to all the other students from the course. You can weigh in as well. And this has really happened, and it allows you to share things and amplify them. And LinkedIn is a great place to do that. And it will be something that will be seen perhaps by future clients of yours, or perhaps by future employers of yours as well. So it's a really good thing to do. So I strongly encourage it. LinkedIn with me and share on LinkedIn. It's a great resource, and I can't wait to see what you're doing. So at this point, you've put up with half an hour of me yabbering away. Finally, it's time for action. We're going to the lab. We're going to set up your environment. The next video is for PC people. We're going to have a video for PC setup. And then the video after that is for Mac people and Linux. You should probably join in with the Mac people. It'll be similar enough for you. And then we will reconvene on the video after that. So it's going to be PC, followed by Mac, followed by us all back together again with fully built environments. Let's do it. Well, if you're a PC person, then you've come to the right place. This is for you. If you're not a PC person, then get out. You're not welcome here. All right, with that out of the way, hello. This is the video when we actually get to set up your environment. And there are going to be 5 steps to doing this. The 6th one will be somewhat optional. There will be a 6th step, but the 5 main steps we are going to do, and they are going to be covered in my repo very clearly. And let's start by going there. We're going to go to the repo that is linked in the course materials. It's at github/myname/agents. And here it is. And when you go there, you see the different directories, the different folder structure that we have. And if you scroll down, you get what's known as the README, the set of information that comes with the course. And I plead with you to read the README. I put a lot of care into the README. It's got lots of great stuff in there. And so do take a look through it, and it will set you up to be successful. In addition to another link to my LinkedIn, I'm starting to sound a bit desperate about this. There's also lots of useful things. And most importantly, there's links to the setup instructions, the Windows setup instructions, the Mac, and the Linux ones. And I'm not going to take you through them right now, because this will be a living, breathing document that I will keep it updated as people hit problems. But you should go through that and have that side by side. If anything, that's going to be better than this video. See this video as bringing it to life, but the instructions will be bulletproof. So it's time for step 1. And just before starting step 1, I do want to draw your attention to a section at the top of the Setup PC guide that's called Gotchas, and it has a few of the common traps that can happen when setting things up for PCs. One of them is an insidious problem with Windows sometimes being set up to not allow names of files longer than 260 characters. And if that is set on your system, then you need to unset it so you are allowed longer file names. And that's something which there are instructions for how to do that. Another common trap is around antivirus software that can interfere with the installation. So there's some steps there as well. So please do look at those gotchas, because they will set you on a good path. All right, step 1 is about cloning the repo using Git. And to get started, if you go to the Start menu and you then type PowerShell, you should be able to open up a PowerShell, one of these things. Let me get rid of the other one that's running here. So here is a PowerShell. And this is like for running commands in the command line. If you're new to this, one of the guides in the guide folder in the repo contains within it, so in this guides folder, there is a guide for using the command prompt that will put you in good shape. But I'm imagining at this point you are familiar, so you know that there could be a projects directory. Most people have created a projects directory in which you should go into it. If you don't already have a projects directory, then you should create one with mkdir projects within your home directory. So you will then have like I do, a projects directory within your home directory. And if I look at the contents of it, it has my LLM engineering folder from my other course, and it has some test folder. And it is this folder that we're going to clone our new repo. First, we need to check that we have Git installed, Git for code management. And you can do that by typing git ---- version. And we'll see that I do indeed have Git installed. If you don't have Git installed and that has an error message, then you can go to Git's website, and there's a link in the setup instructions, and go to downloads and to Windows. And you can click here to download the latest version for Windows, and the installation instructions should be crystal clear, and make sure that you have that in there. You might need to open up a fresh PowerShell. Always worth knowing that you might need to do that. And sometimes you need to restart your computer. Super annoying, but hopefully not. You should be able to type git ---- version and see Git in there. Okay, so the next thing to do is to actually clone the repo. Okay, so we go to the repo itself. Here we have it. And the first thing we do is we go to this green button on the top right of the repo, as I'm looking at it here in a browser. And you click this code button, you select HTTPS, and you'll see the web address of this repo, and you press the copy URL to the clipboard button. And there we go, I have copied it. And now you come here to the PowerShell. Now, again, I'm in my projects directory. So you're in your home directory, then your project subdirectory. If your C drive is quite full, then you might want to do this on your D drive. Just make sure you're within a projects directory, a good place for it to be. And you simply type git clone, and then paste in there the web address of the GitHub repo. And when we press enter, that runs, it does its thing, and it's done. And if I look at that directory, you'll now see that agents is there. I can now go into that directory agents and look at it. And here are all of the directories within the repo. And this folder that we're in right now, which is projects agents, this is what's sometimes known as the project root directory. That's what people call this. And it's a very common place to go. And this is where we are. And that means that we have completed step 1 of the 5-step process. Okay, so we go right away to cursor.com to look at the Cursor IDE, a fabulous platform, and download it and install it if you don't already have it. And you can just press the download for Windows button. It will download the executable, and you can then run it, and you'll get this setup screen, a familiar kind of setup. Accept the agreement, choose where you wanted to install it, and I choose the C drive, but you could put it on the D drive if you're running out of space, and then next, and then we will create a desktop icon and add it to Windows Explorer. And note that it will make changes to path, which means that we will need to bring up a new command prompt for this to take effect. And then we will install that. So it will now install Cursor on my PC so that we can use this platform. And I will jump forwards and see you in a second. And Cursor has now installed, and so I can press finish, and it should now be installed and launching on my PC. There we go. It's right here. Oh no, it is starting. It is starting. Here it comes. It just took a moment, and we can just keep with all of these basics. And I'm going to select to use the word cursor if I want to run it from the command line, and say yes, okay, and then continue. And I'm going to have it in privacy mode. I'm not going to be logging what I do, and you are all set. So now you can sign up for a Cursor account, which is free, and you just press that sign up button and follow the process. And then once you're finished with that, I will see you back here in a second to actually use Cursor. And so here we are in Cursor. It's started. I've signed in. I've actually got a pro trial, and we're looking at the first screen we've got here, and I can press Open Project. And what I can now do is navigate. I'm gonna actually go this PC, and then to my C drive, and then to users and ed, and then projects, which is where my projects are. And here is agents. And this you'll recognize as the directories that we cloned from our repo. And what I can do now is just press this select folder button, which is saying, I want this agents folder to be my project root folder. And it opens up. This is your first look inside Cursor. We've got our directories down here. You've got like a welcome screen up here. I'm going to X out the welcome screen. And now here we have something called the Explorer on the left, which has all of our directories. We've got a chat ability to chat with an LLM on the right. I'm also just going to close that down. And what we're looking at here is the code. And in fact, this navigator on the left is showing you a different directory for each of the 6 weeks of the course from Foundations through to MCP. And if we open this swizzly here, you'll see all of the contents of the first week, Foundations, where we are right now. Okay, we're racing ahead to part 3 of the setup. Part 3, of course, is time for UV, which I'm so excited to show you. So we start by just looking for UV package manager. You will find it's also linked in the setup instructions. Astral is the name of the company that makes UV. Here it is, and it is an extremely fast package manager, as it tells you. So to install for Windows, you simply run this in a PowerShell. And so I've pressed on Windows. I'm now going to press this copy button to copy that in, and I'm now going to go to a PowerShell, which we will do right here, PowerShell, and I'm going to run that command. So here we go. We'll let it do its thing. It's now installing UV, and that appears to have already happened. And it's telling you you can either restart your shell to take this into the path, or you can run those commands. We're going to restart our shell. We type exit to get rid of that shell, and we start a new shell. And you must remember to do this, otherwise it won't work. So PowerShell again, and now we should have access to UV. And so we can type UV minus version, and there we have UV installed on the machine. Now I'm going to show you this next part within Cursor. Here is Cursor. I actually quit Cursor and reopened it again for the same reason that we did that with a PowerShell, to reset the path variables. And within Cursor, I'm going to go to the View menu and choose Terminal. It's also Control and the back tick to bring up a new PowerShell within Cursor, which is a useful thing to do, and that's how we'll do it mostly on this course. And within here, if I do a dir, you'll see, or an ls, you'll see the contents of that directory. And I'm now just simply going to do the command uv sync, which is my way of telling UV that I want to build an environment consistent with what I have in this directory. And I do that, and what we're seeing now is it's building the environment, and it's actually beginning by installing Python, a dedicated version of Python 3.12, which is the version for this project, and it's now installing the packages. Now, people who are familiar with Anaconda know that this process of building a full-spec isolated environment with the right version of Python is something that can take up to an hour, and sometimes on some systems it was taking an hour and a half to build this environment on their computers. What you'll find is that it's a different story with UV. It's running remarkably quickly, and I'm hoping it's going to finish by the time I finish this sentence. But if not, then I may put you on pause and come right back again, because it literally takes a minute or two and it will be done. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so it did take about another 3 minutes, but I didn't lie. It's quick. It's very quick, and it's very impressive. And the big news is that that's it. There isn't any more of the kind of configuration management part. Those packages have been installed. If I look in this directory, you'll see that there is in fact going to be a new folder, .venv. It's created a virtual environment for people that know about Python virtual environments. It's built one, and that now exists in this folder, and that's all there is to it. And going forwards, if we want to run a Python script, whereas you might normally type like Python and then the name of a Python script, you now would type uv run and then the name of the script, and it will automatically run it in that environment. And everything else is the same. The environment is built. It's as simple as that. We're pretty much good to go. And we're now in the end game. We're at step 4 of the instructions, and it's smooth sailing from here. The next step is to set up a key with OpenAI so that you can use OpenAI directly. If you already have a key, you can just skip this step. If you don't want to be spending money on OpenAI, there are alternatives. As I say, you will find them in the setup instructions, in the README, and in the linked in the guides. So please do follow those instructions. But I do assume that most people are okay to spend a few dollars, and it is quite cheap, on using OpenAI because the power of these frontier models is going to allow us to do great things. And of course, you can use DeepSeek or Google's Gemini or Grok as a straight replacement for any of these. Okay, so I go to a browser and I go to platform.openai.com, which is where you get into the sort of API side of OpenAI. And the first thing that you may need to do is sign up. I have already got an account, so I can just log in, but you may need to come in and sign up. If I log in, I can come in with my Google credentials. And here I am logged in as me to the OpenAI developer platform. Now, there are now two things that you need to do. One of them is about setting up billing, and one of them is getting an API key, and we'll do them both now. Okay, and so in order to set up your billing, you go to the settings menu up here, and then you go down to billing right here. And this is where you choose to put in a credit balance. You can see I've got quite a large credit balance. I seem to spend quite a lot of money on different projects with OpenAI, but this course will only cost you a few dollars. But the way that it works is that you do need to put in an amount up front, and $5 as of today is their minimum. So you'll need to put in that $5 and then you spend against it. For people internationally, I know that sometimes OpenAI can be a bore about charging because they charge in dollars, and some credit cards don't accept an international charge like that. So there is some nonsense to get around with that. And as I say, there's alternatives like DeepSeek if you want it. Some students use Grok with a Q, which there's also a great option. And you can also use something called OpenRouter that's quite popular, particularly with international students, because you can set up an OpenRouter account and it will route through to the different models. So these are all different approaches for you, and they work almost exactly the same way. There'll be some sort of billing page like this where you get to choose to top up, and you press add to credit balance to top up with a credit card, and you put in the minimum $5. We won't need any more than that for sure. Okay, and so once you've done that, you then have to go to the API keys section. And this is super important. And this is where you get to set keys that will be how you will access this API from your computer. And the way that you'll do that is you'll press create new secret key. You'll put in any name you want, you can call it, just to remember it in the future. Make sure that for select project, you have default project, so it's for everything, have all permissions, and then press create secret key, and you will get a new key, and you can copy it into your clipboard, and you have to do that to make sure that you preserve it, because we're about to make use of that API key. Now, here's a pro tip to be really careful about. When you copy that key into the clipboard, you might be tempted to paste it into another application, like a notepad, that you will then copy and paste it somewhere else. But there's a trap there. Sometimes these kinds of word processors, when you paste in the key, they'll mess around with it in some way. They'll replace hyphens with long hyphens because they look better in text. And they may replace some characters with international characters that are right for your locale. And if they do that, your key won't work, and it's going to take you ages to figure out what's happened. So be careful of that. Don't do that. I suggest copying it to the clipboard and then immediately doing the next step we're going to do, which is actually using it in our project. So keep that trap in mind. If you do want to paste it somewhere to keep it for your records, then be careful to paste it into a kind of tool that's not going to mess around with the API key. All right, I hope that makes sense. I hope you've now created your API key if you don't have one already, and you've got it, and you've got it nice and safe, and you've recorded it somewhere where it's not messing with the characters, and we're ready to put this to good use. And this is it. We've reached the final step of setting up. Thank goodness. We're back in Cursor, and I pressed X on the PowerShell that was here, so we've got a nice clean screen here. On the left, this is the Explorer. I've collapsed all of these so that you just see the top level Explorer. And what I'm now going to do is right click here and say new file. And I've now got a new file I'm creating at the top level. Make sure that it's at that top level. And I'm going to call it something very specific. And you have to call this file exactly the same thing. And that thing begins with a dot, a period, full stop, as we say in England, and then the letters E and N and V. So it's called .env, and it has to be called exactly that for a very particular reason that we'll get to later. But as long as you've called it .env and nothing else, then you're in great shape. So that is the name of this file. A .env file is a common way that people put in environment variables that they want to set just for the purpose of this project. And there will be environment variables that will contain what we sometimes call secrets, or things that we don't want to be public. We don't want it to be checked into source code. We want it to be something that is just for us, kept private, that we will use. And we can just put things in this file of the form of like a key name, equals, and a value. And that will become an environment variable, as you will see. And in particular, there's one key that we really care about, and you have to do this exactly right. If you make a typo in this, then it's not going to work, and it's going to be really frustrating. So try to be really careful with this. I'm going to type open, and you can see that already the cursor is already, it knows what I want to do. See how it's filling it in for me? I could just press tab to do what it wants, but I'm not going to press tab, as you'll see, because it's got a dummy key in there, not the key that we want. OpenAI _API _key equals. And you can see it's prompting me there, sk-proj- and a number. Now, what I want to put in here is something that will indeed start sk-proj, and it will have a number, but it's going to be a long number, and it's going to be the thing that I just copied into my clipboard from the previous screen from OpenAI. You need to now paste that key right here, and it's got to look just right. It's got to start sk-proj and then be followed by that long number and letters, and it's got to have those hyphens in them just as they are. And this is, of the people that struggle with environment setup, most of the problems end up just being this one tiny step. So please get it right. So hopefully you've done that and you've put that in there and it's got a key in there. Now, if you're using other platforms like DeepSeek, then this is exactly what you will do. The same thing. You'll just put in here DeepSeek, and it will, there we go. It fills it in for me. DeepSeek API key equals. And you might have something else. You might be using Grok, the inference platform, or OpenRouter, or any of the others. Any keys that you've got, you simply put them in here like that, and we will use them later. So with any luck, you've put in OpenAI API key equals, and it's got your real key in there, which means that the setup is complete. Many congratulations. That's the painful part over, as long as it all works. We'll find out. Please skip the next video, which is going to be for the Mac people, the next lecture, and then we will reconvene after that. And I'm so excited to get started. Well, hello, Mac people and Linux people. Welcome to your setup video series. If you're a PC user, then what are you doing here? We just set up your environment. You're set. Go on to the next lecture. All right, Mac people. I had a rough time with the PC lot. I am. This is my sweet spot. I'm a Mac user, so this hopefully is going to be very easy and fun. All right, so I'm in a Finder window here, and I've gone into Utilities, Applications, Utilities, to show you that that's where you can find Terminal, to open up a terminal if you're not familiar with that. But I'm going to now assume that you know about this and open up a terminal. Here's one right here, and make that a bit bigger for you. Hang on. So this is where we are going to do some of the next few steps. And we've actually got a 5-step process for setting up your environment. And this is the first step, which is about cloning the repo, or getting a copy of the code for the class onto your local box. Now, I'm in my home directory here. If I do pwd, if you're not familiar with the command prompt, I've included a guide to get you more comfortable, more confident using the command line. It's common for people to have a directory called projects in their home directory, where they put all of their work projects. And if you have that, then if you do cd projects, it will go in there. Now it looks like I don't have one, so I have to make one with make directory projects and then change to projects. And now I'm in my empty projects directory, but you may have a few projects in there. So the next step is now to bring the GitHub repo here. And so what we now do is we go using our favorite browser to a page where we have the repo, which is linked in the course materials. This is what the repo looks like when you go to GitHub to myname/agents. And you see the repo here. Here are all of the directories, one for each of the weeks that we have coming up ahead of us, and then some general stuff. And if you scroll down, you see something that's known as the project README. And it's really important because it's got great stuff in there. And I urge you to read the README and the things it links to. It begins with some stuff which includes another appeal to LinkedIn with me. I seem to be quite desperate on this front. And then comes the setup instructions. And there's a link for Windows instructions for the other guys. There's a link for Mac and Linux. Come follow that link to get step-by-step instructions. And to be honest, those instructions are going to be way clearer than this video, and I'm going to keep them updated when people have problems. So that should really be your first place to go. And this video, see it as like a video that goes along through it so you get a sense for it. But the README also has lots of useful resources and a ton of important stuff on API costs that I urge you to read because I know this is a sensitive topic. And so please do look through it and read all the other stuff and the links to the guides and so on. And I should probably mention that if you've not used GitHub before, you might need to create a new account with GitHub to get to this point. Now, just before we clone this repo locally, I'd like to go back to the terminal window and I just want you to type git ---- version to check that you've got Git installed on your Mac. And it should come up like mine does with a version number. If it doesn't, you might need to run this command, xcode select ---- install, which installs some of the basic developer tools on your Mac. I've got a link to that in the setup instructions. I won't do it since I already have Xcode and developer tools installed. Okay, so with that, if you're typing git ---- version, you're getting a number there. You come to the repo, you've signed in to GitHub. There's this green code button on the top right, and you press there. And probably I recommend that at this point you select the HTTPS version. I'm going to pick this version because I have that kind of credential, but you can also pick the other one. And then you copy that into your clipboard by pressing the copy button right there. So once you've copied this text, which is the link to this repo, you then come back to the command line and in your projects directory, there I am, I'm inside users ed projects. I'm now going to type git clone and then the repo link that I've pasted from my clipboard and I press enter and in it comes and it's done. If I now have a look, you'll see that there is a directory called agents. If I go into agents, I now see that I have directories for the full project. And I want to mention that where we are right now in this directory that's in my projects directory, the agents directory, this is known as the project root directory. If you're inside the sort of top level directory of your project of agents. So this is the project root and you'll hear that referred to during the course and generally. And so it's worth knowing that that's what it is. But that is step 1 of the setup complete. Okay, welcome to step 2 of the setup for Mac. We're going to now install Cursor, the AI IDE, which is great. It is fabulous and you're going to love it. If you've already got Cursor, then of course you could skip this step. Otherwise, bring up your favorite browser and go to cursor.com. And here we have the screen for installing Cursor. You will need to begin by creating an account using the sign up button over here if you don't have one already, and it will just guide you through. I use my Google credentials myself, and I selected a trial pro plan myself, which is free, at least for now. And I then press download for Mac, which then brings down an installer. I then run that installer and it then asks me a couple of questions. I log in and then it installs it. I mean, I'm sure you are used to these things. You then drag and drop into applications and you open that up and it will install it. Easy peasy. I selected all of the default setup instructions, nothing special at all. And then you should launch it and you should be in Cursor. And that is where we will go next. Okay, so once you've opened up Cursor, freshly installed, this is what it should look like, a nice big empty screen. And we're going to press the Open Project button right here. And we're going to then navigate to Projects, wherever that is. I guess it's going to be at the top, Projects, and then Agents, which is the new folder that we've just installed. This is known as the project root folder. Here it is. And then we're going to press Open. And here it is. Cursor opens up. We've got a nice screen here that's known as the Explorer, which shows all of the files organized by directories. One of these directories might be open. You can just click the swizzly to collapse it like that. There might be a box up here with some sort of welcome to Cursor, blah, blah, blah. Just X out of that extra box on the top left if it's there for you. Over here is a chat screen where you can chat with an AI about your code. And I'm going to suggest for now we X out of that as well to keep things really clean. So what we're looking at now is a nice big area here and the code, the Explorer to look at our directories right here, including the README and so on. And congratulations, you are into Cursor. And that is the second step of the instructions completed. And we are now on to step 3 of the instructions, which is my very favorite step. We are going to install UV, the package manager, which is so fabulous, so quick and easy to use. And you're going to be really happy about this. I know it's like another new thing to learn, which is always a pain, but I tell you, it's so great. The reason we're doing this is partly because a student on my prior course said, you know, you really should use UV. It's so much better. And so I'd heard of it. I knew it was doing the rounds, but I hadn't actually used it myself until that. And that pushed me to do it. And I've never looked back. And we'll find that many of the AI platforms, the agent platforms will use UV themselves. So it's going to work out really well for us. You're going to be grateful I showed you this if you're not already a UV convert. All right. So first step is to install UV. And the way you do that is you bring up a browser window and you can just Google for UV package manager, or you can look at the link that I'll have in the instructions and you'll see that there is the link to the GitHub and it has within it some clear installation instructions. You just simply have to run this one command in a terminal. And I will copy that to the clipboard. There it is. Now, there's actually a new easy way to run things in a terminal because you can do it within Cursor. Here's my Cursor screen again, and there's actually a view menu, and you can go view and then terminal, or you can know to press the control button, not the command button, not the one with the squiggle clover on it, but the control button on the bottom left of your keyboard. Control and then the tick mark on the top left of your keyboard, or at least on my keyboard, and up comes a terminal. But you could also go to the view menu and choose terminal, and here it is. And now you can simply paste in that command to run the installation for UV, and it will be super quick and you'll be done. I'm not going to run it because I've already run it. Once you've done that, you might need to close this terminal by pressing the X, and you might actually need to quit out of right out of Cursor and bring back up Cursor because it needs to refresh its environment variables. But if you've done that, then if you type UV ---- version, it should give you a version number, which is telling you that all is good, UV is installed. And with that, we are almost ready to go. There is now only one command left. And what is that command, I hear you ask? It is simply to type at this point, UV sync. Like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to look at some of the other files here, like a Python version file and a pyproject.toml and some other things and a UV lock. And it's going to use that to build our environment. And let's see it doing that. Off it goes. Now, I told you that it's quick, and you'll see that it was very quick. That is just done. But that's actually quicker than it will be for you. And it's that quick because it does cache things that I've done before. When you do this, it's going to take about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, which is still very quick because Anaconda takes like an hour or something. So it's going to be fast, but there is still a lot to be installed. So you'll have to sit back and wait while everything installs, but enjoy the raw power of UV as everything gets built there. And once it's done, what you may notice is that there's a new directory called .venv that's appeared, which is like a traditional Python virtual environment, if you know these things, that it's created one for this project. And so one of the really nice things about UV is that it's compatible and consistent with all of the other ways you do things in Python. It's not like there's a new sort of thing like Conda. So that's been set up. And now that is going to be the environment that we'll be using from this point onwards. And when you run a Python script, whereas before you might have typed Python and then something, what you're going to type now is UV run and then that same thing. And that automatically makes sure that it runs in that environment. The other thing to mention is that it has installed a dedicated version of Python right for this project. It is, in fact, a Python version 3.12, whilst the latest version of Python is 3.13. That's not yet, not all data science packages are ready for that yet. So 3.12 is what we're using, and everything will be in that Python. It will have installed it for you if you didn't already have it, and it will be dedicated for this project. UV is really good. It combines this kind of isolated environment with something that is fast and simple. And I very much hope that this will have simply worked for you. And that means that step 3 is done and we can move on to step 4. So for step 4, we're going to set up a key with OpenAI. Now, again, I want to emphasize that whilst I do encourage you to be setting up a key with OpenAI and to be using that API, it is not required for this project, for this course, and there are alternatives in the README. But that's what we're going to do now. I'm assuming that you are good for this and that we can come in. And so you go to platform.openai.com, just here like that. And this brings you to the front screen of OpenAI, where you get to set up an account if you don't have one already, sign up, or log in if you have one. And I'm going to log in because I already have one, log in with my Google credentials, and here we have my account. We're logged in, and you will hopefully have done the same. Let me make this nice and big for you. Okay, so there are now 2 things that we have to do now that we're in OpenAI, and we're going to go and do both of them now. Bearing in mind that this is not required, you can also do the same thing. There's an analogous website for DeepSeek and for many others. You could be setting up your keys in any of them and just follow the same kind of process. But let's get to that now. So as I say, it's 2 steps. The first of them is to go to the settings menu up here and come down to billing. And this is where you set up your billing details. Now you have to apply a credit balance, giving OpenAI some money in advance. And I've given it quite a lot of money right here because I'm doing various different things, and you do not need to give it that much money by any means. There is a minimum top up. They require at least $5 as of right now, but they are, they sometimes have deals. There's something going on down here that you could read about. Perhaps there's some deal for free tokens right now, but there's different deals, and you can press the add to credit balance to put in your $5 up front. That's I believe required right now. And we'll only spend a few dollars of that on this course, and that you have complete flexibility, and you can come back and watch to what extent you're spending your credits as we go through. But I suggest doing that, putting in your $5, but bear in mind, if you don't want to, you don't need to. Once you've done that, you then turn to the API keys part of this, which is where you get to see the key that you've set up that you will use for this project. And if you already have a key, then great, you're in good shape. But I assume you don't, in which case you press this green create new secret key. You leave, you give it a name that this doesn't matter, just for your future reference. And then for project, be sure to choose default project and leave it as all permissions, and then press create secret key. It's then going to prompt you. It's going to bring up your key that you'll use, and you can copy it into your clipboard. And we're going to paste it in a moment into Cursor in a place where we were going to use it. Now, here's the thing. Here is a nasty gotcha to be aware of. It's very tempting to take your key and paste it into a useful app like the Notepad or something. But there's a trap there you need to be careful of. Some programs, I think including Notepad, if you paste in some text and then press enter, it changes some of the characters in that text to be nicer formatted. Like it turns hyphens into long hyphens. And that can be really hard to spot. And that will then basically invalidate your key. Your key will now be a different set of letters or characters. And when you try and use that in your file, it's going to fail. And it's going to be almost impossible to track it down because it's going to look perfect. And it's really frustrating. And a lot of people have had that problem. So I urge you just to copy it into the clipboard and paste it straight into Cursor at the next step. And it is good to keep a copy of it somewhere. Just be really careful to make sure you do it in a way that doesn't overwrite your characters, so that you're keeping the original and it feels in good shape. So there is my public service announcement about things to watch out for with keys. But hopefully you've set up your key, you've copied it to the clipboard, you've maybe made a backup somewhere safe, and now we're ready for the next part. And this is step 5 of the environment setup. And as the last step, we're almost completely done. We're back in cursor again, looking at cursor. And I'm going to press an X here to get rid of that screen. I'm going to press an X to get rid of my terminal. So we're looking at a nice clean page here. Now, down here in the Explorer, I've collapsed all these folders. I'm going to right click and say new file at the bottom here. And I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to give it a very precise name, and you have to give it exactly the same name. If you get this wrong by a single character, then you're going to have problems later. So be careful with this one. It starts with a dot, a period, a full stop, and then the letters env, .env, and it's got to be called exactly that. And you'll see why later, but basically this is a file which is often used to store environment variables, things that will load into our environment as variables that we'll use for things like passwords and tokens and keys. And it doesn't get checked into GitHub, so it stays as a private file just for you. And it's a common technique for managing these kinds of things. And it's called .env, and it has to be called exactly that. So what we can now do is type into here a key that we want to remember. And in particular, the one that we want to remember is OpenAI's key. And it's OpenAI _API _key. And it's actually prompting me right here for it because Cursor's that clever and knows what we're trying to do. And we can just press tab to fill it all the way in. But I'm not going to do that. I am going to type OpenAI API key equals, no quote marks, no spaces before or after. And one common mistake is that sometimes people say open API key or open AI key, but it's not that. It's OpenAI API key, and it's got to be exactly this. I think this is one of the only things in this course where every letter needs to be right. And so be careful. This is like 90% of the reason that people are frustrated in environment setup is this very file. All right, what comes next is you simply paste in here exactly the key that came from OpenAI, and it should begin sk -proj and then a bunch of letters and numbers with maybe an underscore symbol as well. And that should all come there, a bunch of them, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0 as it has here in Cursor, but a real key, and not sk_proj and then another sk_proj or anything like that some people have done. It's got to be just right. Sorry to go on about it, but this is such a cause of problems. So make sure that key, the thing that's showing in purple here, is exactly the key that you took from OpenAI, and it should look perfect. And once you've done that, you do like Command S to save this file, and you'll be in great shape. And at that point, that will then be the end of step 5 of the environment setup. We will have done environment setup, and we're good to get into the actual project. How about that? So congratulations. Thank you. Hopefully this is now all going to work. We'll soon find out. I will see you in the next lecture when we reconvene with Team PC. Welcome back, everybody. The Mac, PC, Linux people reunite for our video where we now start to work with our project. Your environment is set up. You should be looking at Cursor, looking nice and clean like this. X out of any windows that are open. Have it look a bit like me. And then on the left here, you've got the directories. The first one up here, 1 Foundations, represents the directory for week 1, where we are right now. We open that up, and I'd like you to click on Lab 1 that comes up right here. At the top here is a little section that tells you about the setup folder, which has all of the setup guide that by this point you should have already covered it all, so it should be fine. And then the guides folder has a bunch of useful guides. It has some stuff to take you through intermediate level Python. And it also has beginner Python. If you're new to Python coding, then it will take you through some self-study guides there. If you're willing to do that, I think it will need some time investment, will be well worth it. And then for intermediate level Python, there's important stuff there too. There's a bunch of stuff. One of the things that comes up a lot in agents is working with async code. There's async stuff in there. There's also going to be things about generators, which are very important, and a lot of good intermediate level Python material in there. If you're also not as experienced with coding, there's going to be stuff about debugging, how to go about debugging. If you get something called a name error, that's something which has always got a way to work at a name error. So there's good details on that too. So please do look at the guides. I put tons of stuff in there. There's also a troubleshooting guide. If things go wrong, troubleshooting takes you through every step, including some great diagnostics at the end. And then this next little comment here is saying that these labs, think of it a bit like it's like an ebook. It's got content and information as well as things to try. And what you'll find is that what you'll see as we go through this may be different. What you have may look different to what I go through right now. And you may say, well, that's annoying. I wish it was all the same. But here's the thing. The reason is because I like to keep adding more stuff, make it current. I try and make it very clear when it's something new that I've added. I bring in extra information to keep it up to date. And when people struggle and they hit problems or they need something explained better, I can put that in there. And that means that everyone benefits from where some people have struggled or I haven't explained something well. I can add it in there. So for me, it's super important to do that. And the reason I don't come back and record all the videos as I do it, well, first of all, that would take a lot of time. And I'd rather spend time getting this up to date. But also because that would erase some of the progress that people have made with videos they've watched. And it can be quite jarring if you're in the middle of a series and then the videos are changing under you. So it's really worked out better for me to keep these labs up to date as much as I can. So treat the labs like a resource. And the way that I suggest that you work with me is watch the video of me going through a lab. I'll go through it, I'll explain it, I'll execute things. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you do it at the same time as me because that's not really the point. The point is as soon as I've done a lab, you come back and you go through it step by step yourself and you use that as a way to build the learning, add in print statements and so on. Okay, a couple more things to say on this. I'm using here things called notebooks, which are a particular type of Python code that's organized in this way into cells. And there's a guide on how to use notebooks like this if you're not familiar with them. And I know that a lot of people from an engineering background initially get a bit frustrated like this because they'd rather work with just Python code. We will work with Python code as well. We're going to use both. But this kind of notebook has its place. It's very useful for research and development, which is an important part of being an AI engineer. And it's also great for learning because you can run things step by step, experiment, tweak, put in print statements and learn. And so there is a benefit to this too. So even if you're not used to these kinds of notebooks, I promise you there's good stuff here too. And we will also do some Python coding using normal modules. All right, that's the end of all of the details. Let's get to running this first lab. Okay, the first step is to go to the top right, just here where you see select kernel. You click there and you have to choose your Python environment. And the way you do that is you type Python environments right here. And this first one up here with the star that says .vmv, it says recommended, and it's right in this directory. That is the one you want to pick. And hopefully that's going to come up really clear for you as Python 3.12 .vemv at the top. And once you've done that, it will be set up here. And you'll always, when you come to a new lab, you'll need to do that. And so do bear that in mind for it to work. Okay. And then as like a final little thing here, it's I got one more link to my LinkedIn in case you haven't succumbed by this point. Remember that you can always LinkedIn with me. All right. So now what we do is we come here to the first of these cells. Each of these things are called cells, these code cells, and we're going to do an import. And what import are we going to do? Well, we're going to do this import here from .env. And you can see that cursor's already suggesting what we could do right now. From .env, import load.env. And I hope you're familiar with what it means to import a function from a module, but if not, then please do check out the guides for a refresher on that. But I'm now going to run this code cell by simply pressing Shift, followed by return or enter, and that executes the cell and it's done. So the next thing we're going to do is use that function, and this is how we do it. We say load.env, and I'm getting prompted already. There it is, load.env override equals true. So what does this do? Load.env is just a utility function which does something very specific. It looks for a file with a very particular name, in your project root directory. And that file name happens to be, as you probably guessed, the name .env. And it's assuming that that is where you're setting some of these environment variables that you want to use for this project. And it's just a utility that looks at that file, interprets it, and sets environment variables as a result. That's all it does. And override is true is just a nice little trick to know about. By default, load.env, if you've already got an environment variable set, perhaps with your profile, then that takes priority and it won't overwrite it. And that can be a nasty little gotcha, because if in the past you've set up an OpenAI API key and you've stored it somewhere global on your computer, that would take priority and you wouldn't be able to figure out why on earth OpenAI is rejecting your key. And so it turns out that this, as you can imagine, was a common problem in the past. And I have learned to tell people to always put override equals true, which means that what's in the .env file takes priority. And we run this by pressing Shift Enter, and now our environment variables will be set. So let's check that. This next cell does an import OS, and then we look for an environment variable that's called OpenAI API key, which is exactly what we named it in the .env file. And if it exists, we're going to print it exists and it begins and give the first few letters. Otherwise, it's going to say it's not set. Please go to the troubleshooting guide. I press Shift and Enter to run this, and there we go. The OpenAI key exists. It begins, skproj. All is good, and I hope all is good for you too. If not, go to the troubleshooting guide. Okay, and now we have a super important import statement, and it looks like this. From OpenAI, import OpenAI. So if that seems weird to you, why is one in lowercase and one not? Anything like that, again, go to the guides. They'll explain the difference between classes and modules and all the rest. But we are now going to execute this. And if this gives you any problems at all, then that might suggest a problem with your UV environment. Troubleshooting guide, and always contact me if you get stuck in any way. I'm here to unstick you. All right. So what we're now going to do is create an instance of this class. Now, I tend to always do it this way, OpenAI equals OpenAI. And that can be a bit confusing to people because, again, we're using like the same word, OpenAI. The proper way to call this would be something like OpenAI Python client. Because what we're doing is creating an instance of the Python client library. But I just call that OpenAI because it's just simpler and shorter. But that's what it stands for. We're creating an instance of that class, and let's run that right now. And it's worth bearing in mind that some people think that when you do this, you're creating something to do with the actual like GPT large language model locally, but you're not. OpenAI is a lightweight library for connecting to OpenAI's endpoints on the cloud. So this is just what people sometimes call a client library. It's just a simple wrapper library around endpoints that calls HTTP endpoints to call the API that's running in the cloud. And that's all it is. It's a simple, lightweight class for that purpose only. So with that, let's keep going. What we're now going to do is create a list called messages. And this is a format that I hope most of you are very familiar with. On my LLM engineering course, we do this one to death. And if you're not, I'll try and put some extra stuff in the guides. I'm not going to explain too much of it right now, but conversations with large language models are often represented in this format that OpenAI invented and has become ubiquitous everywhere. Lists of dictionaries where each dictionary has a role and a content. And in this case, we say the role is user, the content is this simple question, what is 2 + 2? So we run that. And now we're going to actually make a call to OpenAI and check everything is working. Okay, and so now we're going to come here and type the code to call OpenAI, and Cursor is going to make this very easy for us. We're just going to type response equals OpenAI dot, and it's chat.completions.create, and you can see that Cursor's already filling that in for us. I can just press tab and it's going to complete that right away, and it's going to say the model is GPT-4o mini and the messages are messages. That's perfect. And it's also going to take the response, take the first choice, .message.content, and print it. And that's exactly what we want to do. This structure of calling OpenAI is something that is so common these days. If you're new to it, then take a look and I'll try and cover some in the guides. But people who are familiar with this will see this is a very simple way to call OpenAI. And if we run this, we get the response to the question, what is 2 plus 2? We get 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we know we are connected to OpenAI, and so far, so good. So hopefully you're now comfortable that we can both call OpenAI, we can get responses, we can use the very standard chat completions API structure, and Cursor will fill it in for us if we ever forget what it is. But now let's ask a harder question. It's time for us to be a little bit agentic. We're going to put one foot in the agent camp. It's more a workflow than an agentic AI, but still, it's getting there. We're going to ask a question. Please propose a hard, challenging question to assess someone's IQ. Respond only with the question. So that's going to be our question, and we're going to put that into the standard messages structure. And now we're going to ask it. So again, we say response, and it's already filling it in for us. We press tab to complete that. We press tab, but we're just going to change this slightly. We're going to make this reply equals. Maybe I should make this like question equals. So we're going to take back what comes back and we're going to make it question, and then we'll just print the question. Again, Cursor fills that in. Let's run that. And here we go. Here we have a question from OpenAI. If a train leaves a station traveling at 60 miles an hour, another train leaves a different station 120 miles away, the same time traveling 90, how far from the first station will the two trains meet? A nice brain teaser right there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this question and we're going to make a second call to an LLM to answer the question. And that's why I describe this as an agentic pattern, because it is making multiple calls. We are orchestrating multiple calls to LLMs to solve a bigger problem. And so it's going to be relatively easy. We're simply going to continue this by, again, making another messages. Look at how Cursor fills that in for us. Messages where the role is a user and the content is that question. Great, let's run that. That is now messages. And now we're going to ask OpenAI again. So we're going to say response is openai.chat.completions.create. And again, Cursor fills it all in, and it fills in the answer. And it's even clever enough to recommend that we call it answer instead of question. Honestly, it's incredible. So this is exactly what we want to do. We're making the same kind of call to OpenAI's chat completions API, the simplest way to call OpenAI in the cloud. And we are now getting back the answer to the question, and we will print that answer. And I believe the answer we're looking for is 48, I think. Let's see. So we'll get that to print. And here we go. A bunch of information right here, written with 48 at the end there. And you may know this already. You recognize that this has come back in a form of Markdown. It's got some Markdown stuff in it, which LLMs love to talk in Markdown. We can just add in a little code in here, and we can do from it's spooky. It is spooky the way Cursor does this sometimes. From ipython.display, import markdown and display, and then the next line that Cursor is telling us to write. I don't really have a job here, do I? Display markdown, but the only thing it's got wrong, thank goodness it got something wrong, is that what we actually want to display is the answer, not the question. So if we do that and we run this, then we see the answer formatted nicely. I'll let you read through its work, and it comes up with the conclusion of 48 miles. So there we go. That is our first semi-agentic pattern built just in a few minutes. If any of that was unfamiliar to you, check out the guides, play with it, look at it. And as I say, congratulations on getting here. But at the end of this lab, there is an exercise, and I do encourage you to do the exercises. This is where you really get to show that you've done this. You may be thinking, okay, there wasn't much commercial about this project, and I do like to try and weave commercial angles in wherever I can to make this applicable to business. And so I've got an exercise for you to now make this applicable slightly to business. So we are going to try and ask an LLM, first of all, to pick a business area that might be worth exploring for an agentic AI opportunity. Secondly, to identify a pain point in that business sector that it's decided on. And then that's one that it needs to explicitly explain what is that challenge that might be ripe for an agentic solution. And then the third step will be to actually propose an agentic AI solution to that problem. So I would like you in this empty cell here, probably assisted by Cursor, to go through and make this happen with 3 calls to LLMs. First of all, you put something in this message to explain that you want it to pick a business sector. Then you get back the response. Based on that response, you read in the business idea, and then you will repeat these 3 steps in order to get the pain point and then to get the agentic AI solution, and print them all out, print them in Markdown if you wish, in nicely formatted, and use that as a way both to experiment with some agentic workflows and also actually to get some commercial benefit, to get perhaps an interesting idea about a way that you can apply agentic AI to a real business pain point. All right. I hope you enjoy that challenge. If you have any problems with it, of course, then you can either get help from ChatGPT or Cursor, or just drop me a note, and I will see you for the final lecture for this first day. Well, hopefully at this point, you've now brought up that lab, you've gone through it yourself, you've put in some print statements, you've understood what's going on, and you've used it as your way to then complete the exercise, both to try this out yourself, make a few different calls, and you've also got some commercial feedback as a result. And, you know, it's not only about an agentic workflow that takes several steps. In a way, we've also given our LLM some autonomy because we asked it to come up with the business sector that it would investigate. And so you could think of that as, again, a baby step towards allowing the LLM to plot its own path, to choose its own adventure, which, as we'll see, is one of the hallmarks of an agentic AI solution. Okay. So this hopefully looks a bit familiar to you. This is the 6-week curriculum that I showed you before. That is how we are laying on information week by week. And we are now wrapping up the first day. And you're thinking, wow, this was a long time. I will tell you that this day, there was a lot of setup stuff. Other days will be shorter and we'll make a brisker progress with good commercial stuff right away. But what I'm going to do is highlight in that square on the bottom left to show making an agentic workflow. Your first workflow is done. We've made progress already. Next time, we're going to be talking about agents and agentic patterns and introducing what they are and how they work. And I can't wait. I will see you then.